I'm Dave Thompson. I practice as Lost View. I'm a sound and video artist and also musician. I work in building large-scale installations and experiences, and most of my music is based around translating natural and urban environments, and from that creating bodies of work that really do look to engage the audience and create context for them to experience different ideas. What the studio was and is for me was a space that allowed me to move from, I guess, student into a professional practicing artist. So it gave me that space and that environment and community that allowed me to develop my artistic practice and then also engage with the community in really creating dialogue about who I was as an artist and who I was as an individual, and then how I wanted to go, where I wanted to go. So my first commission that I did, which was Narcissism, the idea actually came from talking to the CCD officer, and they brought up the idea of actually exploring something that's more means something to me as an artist, and we had a lot of dialogue and a lot of conversations. And so this work came up, Narcissism, which was really exploring male masculinity and that idea. And that's kind of been a path that I've followed through all my recent works. It's kind of related, going a tangent, the other day I had to go for a grant and I was able to sound and work with the CCD officer and get bit of mentorship around writing it, a little bit of proofreading, support letters, which is actually one of the main works I've done at the studio, which I should really talk about. Was last year I shot a music video, and Keith Deverill, who I spoke about before, we could see a real opportunity here to create that into a large scale installation work, which is really where I work as a sound and video artist, is big scale works that use a lot of new media, a lot of technology. And so we found what we wanted to do was take this music video and take the body of work, which is the album, and actually pull it out and expand it into a live performance installation, time-based work, which is what I do. So I approached the CCD officer about possibly using the theatre here. They offered me a development residency, which is basically free time inside the theatre space and access to all the technology, and then mentorship with the local, the marketing team, the technology team, the AV team, and just gave me a whole week inside the space where I was able to take that risk, bring in all the technology that I wanted and just go crazy. And from that, I was able to get some really good documentation that has then allowed me to approach international touring agencies, international festivals, other art spaces like the Substation, and basically from that has built this whole tour, a 12-month work period. And I think that's kind of what Barringer and the studio space does, is you get a studio, but you also get that support circle and those opportunities around.
My name is Jessie Yvette Journoux-Ryan, and I had a studio at Barringer for 3 years. Basically, my practice was at a halt prior to having the studio at Barringer, because I had a space to make artwork, which was in fact a storage space at home, and it was just full of boxes and all sorts of things, and it was just too hard to even start to figure out how to make a space work for my artwork. And so I wasn't actually making any artwork at all. So I guess once I had the studio at Barringer, I suddenly had this formal space that I was paying for and that I had to actually, really gave me an incentive to make work, and it helped me. It was an empty space and I was able to make that space my own, and it allowed me to get organised, I guess, in my practice and in my working, in my methodology. To create work, and I actually made a lot of work. So it was, it really was a great incentive. And so I think the studio for 3 years really got me into a rhythm of coming into a working space, being prolific and actually making the most of my time. But for me, I really responded to getting continuous feedback whilst working. So my studio had window frontage, and so the general public were in my studio constantly when I was working, and that didn't intimidate me at all. Actually, really was a great incentive to get busy and make work, and to actually interact with the general public and the local community. To have their feedback, I was able to really get an insight into what was working, what they liked in my work, and I really feel that shaped the progression of my work. And I've been very fortunate to have been awarded with the Burrinja Climate Change Biennale, and that was a privilege to be awarded with that prize, and the People's Choice Award for Open Studios recently. And so it's just been really encouraging I'm very humbled but very encouraged as well to keep making the work. Really great to work with CCD producers because they've all been fellow artists, and it's wonderful to be able to liaise and get advice and just talk to people who are in charge or coordinating something, who have a real insight into what it's like to be an artist, and so it makes that interaction a lot more accessible and authentic, and I guess there's a bit of underlying trust initially that goes on there. So as an artist, I find that, you know, in the big art world and in big galleries, that can be really hard to get that communication. So that's been brilliant. Having the studio at Burrinja really taught me. I was working in isolation before, but now, you know, you can actually, there's a lot, it's fruitful and enriching to be part of your local arts community.